Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, one is star. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. It is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. And cars broke down, I missed the bus, there runs a 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right on the jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just the perfect day. It's just the perfect day. Na, 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 na,
Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. This week we have special guest David Wachs. David is CEO, founder, aka head robot mechanic at Handwrytten. Handwrytten is bringing back the lost art of letter writing through scalable, robot-based solutions that write your notes in pen. Developed as a platform, Handwrytten lets you send notes from your CRM system such as Salesforce, the website, apps, or through custom integration. Here to talk about creating a company like this and developing all the technology behind it is our guest, David Wachs. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. I'm excited to be here. This is very cool.
Yeah, we're really excited to talk about this. So for people who need a little bit of background on Handwrytten, how would you describe the company to people?
Handwrytten is really designed for people that want to send handwritten notes, whether it's one-off notes to their grandmother or mother, which is kind of how I started the service, to all the way to big corporations that want to send thousands or tens of thousands of handwritten notes to their customers. The problem is everybody wants to send one of these, but nobody ever does. It's either too much of a pain to go get a note, or you forget a stamp and then you have to go get one of those. So what we do is we allow you to do the entire process online, as easy as sending an email. And kind of like you said in your intro there, it's really designed as a platform. So we integrate with Zapier and Salesforce and HubSpot and all these different ways. But what happens is after you send us your note in electronic forms through one of those means, we then use robots, actual robots. Each one holds a real pen. It's just a standard G2 ballpoint pen. You can pick them up at Staples. And the robots write out your note on the stationery of your choice and the handwriting style of your choice. And then we write out the envelope, we put a real stamp on it, and we mail it on your behalf. The whole thing looks totally authentic, right down to that real forever stamp. So currently we're doing about 120,000 of these a month. We've got about 90 robots doing this on our, for our clients' behalf. And sorry, just somebody came to the back door, which is strange.
Perfect timing.
Sorry about that. It's nobody ever comes to our office back door. So yeah, we've got typically we've got about 95 robots working, and yeah, we're just we're really the only company in this space doing anything like this.
Yeah, I actually, for me, it's not the lack of desire to send a handwritten note, it's the lack of handwriting skills. And the fact that I could actually pick a handwriting style and like, hey, this is, send it out and people think that I actually can have legible handwriting is awesome. So that to me is cool.
Well, and like you said, Dave, all the little steps are what keep people from doing the right thing, right? I mean, it's kind of business or sales 101 anyway, this idea that, handwritten notes are really valuable and people think that, that's a great way to connect with people. But, a lot of people don't do it for one reason or another. And it seems like all those little steps you pointed out, each one of those things are hurdles to getting people to do this. So the ability to do it through sort of an app or an integration is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and so basically, just really quickly, my background, before doing this, I had a company that did text messages. So, and we would send 1 million texts a day for some big retailers in the United States and that type of thing. And while that works, in text messaging and email and Twitter and Slack and Facebook posts, they all work. We're all getting overwhelmed by this growing pile of electronic communication on a daily basis. And because of that, we start to discount it more and more. And we realize how little effort it takes somebody to send you a fully customized email or text message or even voicemail drop or whatever. It all is so automatable that nobody really pays it that much attention anymore. And so when I was looking around at what I was going to do after I left my last company, I saw that people that received handwritten notes around the office, they really, not only did they keep them, they showcased them. And they put them on their bookshelves behind their desk, or at home, maybe they have it magnetized to their fridge if they don't have a stainless steel fridge. And they really savor them. And the idea was, well, okay, everybody else, including myself, was pivoting right to electronic and communication like text messages. What if we started pivoting left and going to the old school? And that's where we're really trying to make a mark, because there isn't anybody else really doing this currently at the scale we're doing it. There are a few companies that are laser printing notes, but it's pretty apparent when you look at those how ungenuine they actually look versus our offering. If you were to look at it, I mean, I see these things all the time. And oftentimes I'm taken aback at, wow, this really does look like somebody sat down and wrote it. So, I think we're kind of in a unique position to help people really stand out when everything else is going electronic, to kind of put that personal foot forward and break through the din of all that and really get to your end customer or prospect that you want to get to.
Yeah, we actually just had a guest on our show a few weeks ago, Scott Ringland, who's he focuses in like solar energy and stuff like that. But he took the time to send us a handwritten note, and that just kind of it sets them apart from everyone else. I recently had a birthday a few weeks ago, and the likes on Facebook and the text messages. I mean, it's something. It means a lot more when you get this note and it's personal, or someone calls you. You stand out so much more versus just the like on Facebook or the random text message.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think, I spend a lot of time writing and speaking on the subject of sort of relationships, personal relationships. And one of the other topics that we get into a lot is sort of this idea of technological saturation. That, sort of as iPhones and things like that have sort of lost their novelty, we sort of are striving to find more, real life experiences. As humans, we're pushing back and we're doing craft beer and foodie movements and all this kind of stuff, and we're kind of looking back to the new old way, right? And so I think that this is right in that alley where, you're right. I mean, if you're doing sales or you're doing, even just trying to foster great relationships, sending somebody a handwritten note is going to go infinitely further than, just giving them that like on Facebook.
So we were working with a online mattress company that has done actually really, really well. But when you used to open up those boxes of the mattress, the very first thing you'd see when you get that mattress from UPS was a handwritten, quote unquote, handwritten note with a little doodle on it saying, we're so excited that you bought our mattress. And then the company grew and grew, and then they said, we don't want to do this anymore because we're beyond, we don't feel we need to create a personal connection with our customers anymore.
Oh, wow. What an insane thing to say.
Yeah. And my eyes just kind of crossed, and it's like, what do you say to that? Like, what got them, and granted, I'm not saying the handwritten note got them to where they are today, but that personal approach sure did. And trying to create, in a day and age where everything is just sold on Amazon and nobody ever meets anybody else, taking a moment out and creating a personal connection is so important. And this brand basically saying, oh yeah, that's not important anymore is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, that's insane.
Especially when we were automating it for them. It's like, why take that away? But
an example of this is like with Traeger, for example. We just bought a new house over the summer and we got a Traeger grill. And that was one of the things. The first thing you see when you open the box is a handwritten note from Jeremy Andrus, their CEO. And of course, I was a little let down because I do believe it was laser printed. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I work in advertising and marketing. Like I see these things a lot, you know, so it wasn't that convincing, but nonetheless, it was still, you know, a cool thing. Like it was a nice thing. It was on a nice piece of paper. It was like, seemed kind of valuable, you know, even though all it was just this dumb little piece of paper. It was like nice quality. It was well printed, all these things, you know? And so like, I don't know. I mean, like ultimately I still threw it out, but the sentiment was nice, you know, and he like had a personal email on there and stuff, or a quote unquote personal email on there so that you could reach out if there were problems and stuff. And, you know, just even though it was kind of a semi-personal touch, like it went so much further. So something like this that feels infinitely more personal, feels much more authentic, you know, seems like it would go even further. So yeah, it's insane.
Yeah,
example.
The fact that you're talking about that right now, I mean, exactly. I mean, it certainly made some sort of impact. And, you know, I'm now a writer for Inc. magazine, and I'm trying to, as much as possible, talk about topics just like this, which is user experience, really more customer experience, about what can you do to make that customer feel more personal, even if it's just greeting them when they walk into your store, or following up with a small gift of candies or whatever it is. There's so many ways where people need to remember that the experience is important. And there's been a lot of surveys that show that customers, not only do they want to shop at stores where they feel they're having a good user experience or customer experience, they actually tend to spend much more. They spend like 20 or 30% more buying a product sometimes when they feel like that experience has been customized to them. So, you know, when we're all chasing that dollar away from Amazon, I mean, it's a great approach to try to make somebody feel personal and not just a database, you know, a number in a database somewhere.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's like amazing how little it takes, really. You know, just this handwritten note could take the place of a box of chocolates or whatever else. You know, I mean, it's, you know, just the little things that make the difference. And, you know, as we were talking about, it's this, you know, quote unquote human connection or feeling of connection to those people that I think makes the difference.
Absolutely.
Let's take a step back a little bit and get a little bit more of your history. We kind of glazed over that and went right into the topic and the website. What's your background? You worked in that text messaging platform, but prior to that, what did you do and how did you get into this space?
Yeah, how do you start making robots?
Yeah.
So I went to school. I graduated college in 2000 with degrees in engineering and business, always planning on kind of becoming an entrepreneur. But to pay off school, I needed to get a real job first. So I became a consultant for a company called, this was in the go-go 99 when everybody was starting .com startups. And so I worked for a company called Diamond Cluster that was helping large, boring corporations try to become startups on the inside. And I worked there for a few years, kind of doing the typical business analyst stuff, just being a spreadsheet monkey. And then went from there to being an investment banker, doing equity analysis, and I hated that. And then ended up in a venture capital firm in San Diego, working for a lunatic. And it was best story. Stories best told over multiple beers. But in addition to having my office bugged with like a garden owl that was secretly a video camera and just all sorts of crazy stuff, I only lasted there about 4 months and then got fired for something I had no knowledge of.
There was some the owl told on you.
Yeah, exactly. There was some stock transaction that the venture capitalist wasn't happy with that I had zero involvement in, but he came screaming in my office and blamed me for it. And anybody in San Diego knew this guy, this venture capitalist, and would have known that nobody would approve any stock transactions except him. So it was total bogus, but I got let go for it and kind of went home to Scottsdale, Arizona, where I grew up with my head between my legs, because all those years after college, I worked very hard to pay off school debt, but I didn't save anything. Instead of saving a little nest egg, a rainy day fund, I didn't do any of that. I just kept paying down school debt, with everything I had. So when stuff hit the fan and I needed to recoil and regroup, I didn't have any cushion to do that with. So I went home and lived in a apartment that my father lent me, and over drinks, coffees, I guess, we were thinking of what types of businesses we could start, and we decided. And he actually had the idea of using BlackBerries or barcodes to get information on houses. This is before the iPhone came out. So I said, well, I don't know about BlackBerries and barcodes, but why not cell phones and text messages? Excuse me. So that's where my first company, a company called Sell It, came about. We were the first provider of text in for information on houses with a service we called House for Sell. And I quickly realized I wanted to be more than just house for sale. So then we got into doing texting for retailers and Chicago Tribune and that type of thing. And really, it was the classic story of a guy sitting at his computer with a 2-liter jug of Mountain Dew and programming for 6 months on end or 8 months on end, and then releasing a minimally viable product.
What was that? You sitting on the computer programming, or was that someone else that you paid to?
No, that was me. That was me writing some very bad code.
Dude, I feel your pain. I've been down this road.
Yeah. So I did that, and what's crazy and a little, looking back, because this latest venture hasn't accelerated that quick. It all happened rather quickly. Like, I did it for about 9-10 months, sitting at that empty apartment, got a few clients, and then quickly, like a few realtor clients. And then I got noticed by Marie Claire magazine because they were looking to do a text in for information campaign on products in their magazine. And I said, well, it's basically house for sale, just replace houses with cosmetics and we're done. So I sold it to them for a lot more money than I was selling it to the realtors. And I was able to move back to Chicago to be with my girlfriend at the time, and the business was off and running. And then I sold the company 7 years later to a company called ePrize, which was kind of in the online promotions and sweepstakes industry. We
lost him. It said the internet connection is unstable.
To Hello World. So that's how I made the money that I'm now spending on Handwrytten, or investing in Handwrytten. Handwrytten's been around for about 6 years now. So what happened was when I finished up my role at ePrize or Hello World or Sell It or whatever you want to call the last role, basically the next day I turned around and I started Handwrytten. And it started just like the first one, with me sitting at a desk, this time not writing the software. Instead, a lot of the software got outsourced. I had just read The 4-Hour Workweek, which was a good book. So I tried to implement some of those tactics. I know, grumble, but I did implement some of those, and I was able to bring in some workers through a website called Upwork. And strangely, some of them are still with me today. The scope of Handwrytten is much bigger than Sell It was. And the reason is we have iPhone apps and Android apps and a very robust website and then an API and all that. And so there, the only coding I've done is to actually run the robots, which I can talk about, because everything else I feel is kind of table stakes. You got to have it. And it's not really that proprietary, but there's a lot of it. There's a lot of moving parts. And then we have Salesforce integration and HubSpot integration and Zapier integration and all these things. So I didn't write any of that. I'm the lead architect, and I sit down with the developers or Skype them and tell them what to do and how I want it to look. But what I have programmed is the actual robot. And it is a robot. It has a robotic arm, and there's orchestration that's needed when you're dealing with 90 of these. So, every time you roll out a new software release, you have to push it to these robots. And really that's the secret sauce of Handwrytten is the software in the robots instead of anything else. So
can you actually maybe dive into that a little bit for us, like the learning curve it took to actually, develop the first one, how you came about it? I'm sure like just the behind the scenes amount of craziness that goes on developing a robot is got to be insane.
Yeah. So I want to be careful because I don't want to say anything too insulting to the company we used prior to the robots, but we used an off-the-shelf, really kind of the only off-the-shelf handwriting machine prior to, and they were who I started with when I started Handwrytten. We wrote all the software for the front-end websites and the APIs and all that. And then when the orders came in, I would just push them to these machines that we bought from a company in Virginia. But what I found was the company in Virginia had a very interesting governance structure over there, and they weren't willing to sell me enough robots for me to scale. I kept saying, let me buy these highly overpriced robots off you, and they said, well, you're only limited to 4. So then I started a second company and said, well, sell this company 4 more. And they did. And then they said they wouldn't sell that company anymore. And if they found out I was doing this, and it just didn't become scalable. And then on top of that, the robots had all sorts of weird flukes with them where they would literally write on themselves. So instead of writing on the paper, the pen would write on the metal of the robot. And they'd run out of ink and just start writing empty pages. And every robot had to be controlled. You can only control, I think, 8 robots with 1 computer. So you needed a whole bunch of computers to support your robot growth. The robots were insanely expensive for what we were doing. So for all these reasons, I kept turning to my employees and saying, well, we're going to build our own robots. You just watch. We're going to build it. I had no knowledge on how to build a robot. But what we did was we took an off-the-shelf writing arm called an AxiDraw, which you can buy for like $400. And we used that as the main, I'm probably sharing too much here, but we used the AxiDraw as the main writing arm of our robot. The thing with the AxiDraw is kind of twofold, though. Number one, it can draw, but it can't really write. So trying to get it to like where you type in a whole bunch of words and have it write that out, it doesn't do that. If you were to draw out all the letters on one page, it could do that, but it couldn't recreate typed in text. So the software that I wrote handles all that, and it does it extremely well, I will say. And then the other thing with the AxiDraw is it doesn't have any sort of paper handling mechanism. So if you're looking to feed, unlike our competitor, which went out of business, basically the way they worked is they would put a piece of paper down, and then the robot arm would draw on it or write on it, and then they'd lift that paper up, put another one down, and do it over and over again. But I mean, that's ridiculous to have somebody standing there and replacing paper after paper. So we spent something like 2 years before we were able to get our first automated robot out the door that incorporated a control board and the AxiDraw writing arm and a large functional paper feed mechanism. And we're still kind of refining it to this day, but it's been a crazy process of getting that whole thing down and just learning how to build a robot and bringing in people. We have Arizona State University not too far away here, and we've hired a bunch of mechanical and electromechanical engineers from ASU to build these and refine them. And one of my early engineers said, some of these parts that are made out of metal that cost $400, you could 3D print. So I was like, okay, well, let's try that. And we'd buy a $500 3D printer on Amazon. And we were able to print over $500 of parts in one robot. So for every robot we built, it paid for that 3D printer. So I thought, wow, this is fantastic. Let's, continue down this path. and we started 3D printing everything, which ended up being a bad idea. So then we backed off, and we've invested in very expensive laser cutters, in addition to very, very high-end 3D printers that serve particular purposes for different parts. And really, we've been able to cut out a huge amount of metal from these robots that we build. And now the machines are really very, very custom. And everything in the robot is very custom, and most of it is grown or cut in-house. So it's been a really interesting process. And then just the continual refinements on it, so that getting more pages through the system and less intervention and that type of thing. It's been fun.
I can imagine, and being able to. I was just going to say that being able to manufacture and replace your own parts is probably super handy, rather than calling someone and trying to have them ship something or diagnose or troubleshoot it. Just being able to do it yourself probably eliminates a lot of the headache that comes with dealing with a third-party vendor. Oh
yeah, and so when we started this, actually building these robots a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago, whatever it was, we would order, there's this really cool company called Exometry that you basically upload to them a 3D model of a part using SolidWorks or whatever your CAD system is. And then a couple of weeks later, the parts show up on your doorstep. So you basically just, tell them how you want the metal cut. They cut it and send it back. That's great unless you're trying to, we had a lot of parts. So every robot, it was very, very expensive. And then B, the only way to get costs down is to buy parts for like 10 robots at a time. So if we wanted to make any small incremental changes on these robots, we really had to know what we were doing and make sure everything was perfect, or we screwed up parts for 10 robots. Versus now with some of the 3D printers we have and the laser cutters, we can make these little refinements, same day. And it's almost just like drawing it out. You just draw it out and off it comes off a laser cutter or a 3D printer. It's really amazing how we're able to kind of tweak everything. We're no longer using these $500 3D printers. They don't really cut muster. So now we're doing like $15,000 3D printers and all the rest. But it's really the same. It's the same type of thing. It's just at a different scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, an incredible story. It's crazy how, in just such little time, it's managed to evolve so much and become so complicated. Like it's a pretty amazing solution to this kind of problem. I remember back in my old ad agency days, there were little, houses you could go to that would sort of, they would do handwritten letters for you. But it was like almost like slave labor. They would set up all these people in a room and everyone would sit and actually hand draw letters.
It's like
it's not
Adam
scalable.
Sandler movie with his grandma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally not scalable, totally not personal, totally dependent on the handwriting of the person doing it. And, and it wasn't a very effective way of doing this kind of thing. I wonder, Dave, if we could talk a little bit more about, you said that you've been doing some writing in ink and everything about sort of this, idea about developing relationships and things like that and the value of doing this kind of thing, just, selfishly, because that's something I'm really interested in. Also, I wonder how you sort of pivoted into that space. It seems like your Sell It brand, sort of chased necessity, right? Or, you noticed obvious directions to go and how this thing could fit. And it wasn't so much about developing a relationship as it was getting into the pocket of somebody's device, getting right to somebody quickly and efficiently. This, however, feels more like, how to develop quality relationships at scale almost, And so I wonder if there's some ethos or something going on behind the scenes on this thing that sort of led you into going down this road.
It really was kind of, maybe I've kind of just forgotten the real genesis of this, but it really boiled down to when I was leaving Sell It, I was writing a lot of handwritten notes to my employees and to my ex-clients, just thanking them for their business over the years and their loyalty. And things don't go. We could do a whole episode on what happens after acquisition. Things don't go very well, and just thanking them for sticking through it with us and everything like that. So when I was writing those notes, it was really one of those there has to be a better way type moments. And then I did visit the desk of my sales guy, Eric, and he had a bunch of handwritten notes on his desk. And I thought, gee, there has to be a way to automate this. And then what happened was I had the idea. I couldn't really work on it because I was in a lockup period with the sale of the other company. And I sat on it basically. And then another company called Bond appeared, and Bond was doing the exact same thing. It's very interesting how these ideas kind of percolate up out of the zeitgeist or the ether or whatever at the same time. But Bond appeared. They were actually using the same off-the-shelf writing arm that we started with too, and then they pivoted to 3D printers. And they were just basically putting a pen where the 3D printer hot end goes, and it can write, but it doesn't have any sort of paper feed. So they were doing this. They were spending a ton of money on marketing, and they did a great job of getting handwritten clients, because what they do is they market on the subways of New York City. People would sign up, realize that Bond, it would take them a week and a half to get their notes out, and it was expensive, and their customer service stunk and all this, and then they'd end up with us. So for years, we were kind of like this little leech on the back of Bond, just taking all their clients when they're, and benefiting from their advertising. And then Bond got purchased by Newell Brands, the Rubbermaid people.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And they stuck around for about another 2 years. And then sure enough, they collapsed. And then we got a couple more of their clients from that. But ever since then, we're kind of the only ones doing this, which is both good and bad. Without having another company in here, it's hard to say we're in an actual industry. And then also, it's always good to have competition to kind of keep you on the straight and narrow. So
yeah, it's true. We talked about it a little bit before we got on the air that, Apple had once delved into something like this. And it's funny because when I mentioned this to people, most people don't even remember it. It happened so quickly, but they had this, service. They had a little app where you could, and I don't recall their notes being handwritten. I don't think they were. I think they were just lasered, but they had these really nice letter press cards that you could order or whatever. And it was really convenient to be able to order it from your phone. And, it sounds a lot like the service you're doing, less the handwritten thing, but I just thought it was incredible. But like, what's surprising to me, and the only reason I bring it up is not to, say that, well, if Apple could do it, you could do it kind of thing. But what I am trying to say is that Apple couldn't make it work, and you guys did. And so I think, what's happening over here is really interesting because, for me, it's huge. I think this is an incredible service.
Well, thanks. There are a lot of, I'm not going to say there's a ton of companies doing cards similar to what Apple did. There was the one that was on Shark Tank called Felt, F-E-L-T. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But all those offerings are all kind of laser printed. They're beautiful photo, and then maybe your note written in brush script, or maybe you use your finger to write your note on the iPad screen or something, and it recreates that in print on the back of the card or something. There's a lot of that. There's another company called Postable doing it. But as far as companies that are actually using a pen, we're the only one of any scale doing actual pen notes. Now, devil's advocate, you could say, well, what's the benefit of writing in pen? And quite frankly, there's an argument to be made there, because pen does get pretty good where it's hard to tell the difference. But I personally can tell the difference, and I have people that do the smudge test where they lick their finger and wipe it on the note and see that it is a genuine pen note and that it does run and everything else. And then we have a lot of clients, and our own paper stock in particular is very rough. And a lot of that, if it's pre-existing stock with like a foil logo or embossed logo or whatever it is, you don't really laser print on that after the fact, but obviously they're made for writing. So, when you see what we do and how nice it looks, it's there is a difference between this and just some brush script laser printed thing. I'm not saying there isn't a place for the laser printed thing. There certainly is, but it's if it doesn't cost a whole lot less than what we're doing, you should demand your money. Go find somebody else, because everything we do, we have to start with that printed piece, right? Like, so when you go to that, whatever that company is that's replaced Apple in doing those photo books and photo cards and everything, that's a single print process. They're printing the message, they're printing the card all at once. We need that too, just to get the card. And then we have to put it through this very slow process after that of writing the note on the card, which is why it's so costly for we're still not that expensive, but it should be more costly than any laser printed offering.
Sure.
So, that's the thing. And it's funny because one of our quote unquote competitors these days is Postable, and Postable should be way less money than us because it's just a laser printed message on a card that's laser printed at the same time. So I don't know. I mean, good for them for demanding high prices, but it should be substantially less than what we charge. Or maybe we just charge too little. I don't know.
Yeah. Can you you can set up your website or you have an API built in for like Salesforce,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do you have that set up to the point where you can have your CRM pretty much lined up and you've got reminders to contact this person on a certain day and it just automatically does it for you?
Yes. So through Salesforce, what it does is there's two ways to use it in Salesforce. Number one is we can add a button to like the contact record or the opportunity record or whatever. So that basically when you go into Salesforce and you see that contact John Doe or whatever, next to his name, there's a button that says send handwritten note. You just click that button and you never leave Salesforce. It just walks you through the steps of, you confirm the address where the note goes, you type in your message or you select a pre-existing template of a message, choose the handwriting style. And then if you want, you can add a gift card to Starbucks or Amazon or whatever. And then you hit send. And when you do that, what's nice about it is it records it back to the activity log in Salesforce. So you see, I emailed them on Tuesday, I met with them in person on Wednesday, and I sent them a handwritten note on Thursday. That's all recorded within Salesforce. The other thing you could do within Salesforce is what's called Process Builder. And Process Builder does allow you to fully automate sending handwritten notes. Basically, a prospect or opportunity gets to a certain stage in your pipeline, you trigger the handwritten note rule, and it sends the mail merged message with a gift card, out to them and records it back to the activity log. Similar to that, within HubSpot CRM, you could do the same thing where you add a little send handwritten note button directly to the contact record. It does for HubSpot, it's a little different. It actually opens up a little window with handwritten, and you just go through it and select your card and everything. But otherwise, it's the same. And then for more automations within HubSpot and like 1,000 other systems, we plug into what's called Zapier. I don't know. Are you either of you familiar with Zapier?
Yeah, no. I'm actually looking at your Zapier integration page right now, and I'm blown away. It's like 55 pages of integrations, like all these things, like all the way down to simple stuff like Gmail. So
yeah.
Presumably, if you've got, even if you don't use a CRM, like in my case, I don't really leverage a CRM, but I mean, I live in Gmail, right? And so if I could, from my Gmails, pass a handwritten note from within that experience without having to, leave Gmail or whatever, that would be, it's massive. That's huge. I'm just flipping through these as we're talking, and we also use Klaviyo, and you've got a Klaviyo integration here. There's a bunch of really cool ones.
Do you have one for Notion? I've recently started working with Notion.io, and I really like it, but there's a few shortcomings, and one of them is the fact that no one really knows about it yet.
Yeah, I just happen to know that you don't, and nobody does. So don't feel bad. Yeah, Zapier actually has 0 integrations with Notion.
Okay. Yeah, Zapier has really been a godsend for us because it's really helped us make it easy for people to use us as that platform. but for Gmail, it might be a little difficult. I don't know who created that integration example. Anything's possible. I think it would just be hard to get the address information. But anything's possible, and if there is a way to integrate, we'll certainly try to do it. But yeah, I mean, to do all those types of automatically sending a note, we do it all the time. And in fact, when you go on handwrytten.com and you request samples, that just goes through a Gravity Forms form on our WordPress site, and then it goes straight into Zapier, and then from there it sends a handwritten note request through Handwrytten. So we use Zapier for our own uses too.
That's crazy.
And it works super well. I mean, I can't say enough great. If I didn't work for Handwrytten, I'd probably want to work for Zapier. It's such a great service. But yeah, and we do currently, we've got about 150, 200 customers that are really avid Zapier users. So it's got a lot of room there.
So obviously there's a lot of moving parts in your business. You've got the website that are generating the leads and the sales and everything. And then it pushes probably through Zapier and then into your processing to get the actual product made. Can you talk about automating your system and how you came across, just figuring out, the best workflow to accomplish what you're trying to do? I'm in the process of doing that right now with my business, and it's such a pain in the butt to just, I should have done this, and then you got to go back and correct that, and it's kind of labor intensive, but it ends up saving you a lot of time. Can you maybe walk us through your process of getting everything automated?
Yeah. So our system is all custom built. It's actually using PHP as the back end, which I know is out of favor compared to Python or Node or whatever else. But our website, our back end system is all written in PHP with MariaDB or MySQL database on the back end, and it's all hosted in Amazon. And it's all very, very custom. And it was designed to be a platform from the get-go. So we designed, instead of designing the website first, we designed the mobile apps first. And the reason for this is when you design a website and a backend at once, the developers can get sloppy and start intermingling what's front end and what's back ended to one thing. I know this because I did it when I created House for Sale. You can write a really poorly crafted website that does what the back end's supposed to do. But when you design an app first, you have to separate. It's called separation of concerns. You have to separate what the front end does, whether that's an app or an API or a website, and what the back end does, which is the database storage and the order charging and all that stuff. So when we designed Handwrytten, the very first thing we did was design an iPhone app, followed by the website, and then finally the Android app, because I didn't think anybody cared at the time about Android. So now it's a big thing for us, but at the time it wasn't. So I don't know if that really, the system we've built is very, very custom. It wasn't just kind of connecting things through Zapier. Now it connects to Zapier, but our system is very, very custom. So, and then what it does is when orders come in, there's a backend system that my team uses. They pull the orders into an order processing system. They send those orders to machines, and then there's manifests that get printed. And these manifests are just laser printed documents that say, these 500 blue thank you notes each go to, each of these people, and these are the notes themselves. And then the stuffers sit down holding the manifest and the stack of orders, and they go through them and make sure everything looks good. And then they actually have a little mobile website they use on their phone, scan a QR code that's found on the manifest, and it sends any bad orders right back through the system. So we've tried to automate everything, even the bad order redos, which unfortunately there's still several of. So
Yeah.
Does that answer it?
That does, actually, because I was curious if it was just a matter of me, the consumer who's ordering the card. If I hit hit enter on the thing, if it just automatically goes to the computer and prints it or handwrites it. I was wondering if there was a human middleman that had to, be in the middle of the process, and that answered it for me. So.
Yeah. So what we do is we try to get everybody, and our goal is next business day completion. So if you send us an order today, it'll be in the mail tomorrow. But to make that efficient, it's not just first in, first out. So instead of being, if the first order of the day is a blue thank you note, and then we're followed by 3 green birthday cards, you know what I mean? And then there's a 4th blue thank you note. What'll happen is when and this is really getting into the weeds, and I've never talked about this, but when an operator comes into the office, they go into a back-end system and they will print out those 2 blue thank you notes together, because it's easier to stuff 2 in the machine at once as opposed to do, 1 and then go back to it and then do 2 others. So in some ways, without you knowing, your order might get a little precedence if it happens to be leaning on somebody else's first in order. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what we do is we try to stack the orders or batch the orders that way. The other thing that we're doing now is you can actually go on our website, kind of like that iPhone Apple tool you had. You can actually design a card on the fly. So now we have a whole system for managing those cards that get printed and then we write on them. So there's a lot of managing of that, and that's becoming an inventory issue over here. So we're managing all that. That's a big project for us to tackle next. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. But it's been interesting to try to come up with easy to use tools to help our quality assurance associates as they stuff those notes in envelopes before they send them to the stampers. Just to make sure that everything looks good and has the appropriate gift card inserted or business card inserted or whatever that might be. We've got all these tools for that. But now we're looking at like computer vision to actually try to read those cards and make sure, it says Dear Jim and not Dear John, because that would be bad,
Yeah. Well, thank you for getting into that. I'm sorry. I'm one of those guys that kind of likes the minutia, the behind the scenes details, because usually that's what bites me in the butt is those behind the scenes details. So
yeah, and honestly, the only way to know it is to do it, and you realize how much, how many unanswered questions there are, and how many you have to go and solve as you go. It's like anything else. It's a slugfest. You just got to get in there and start answering all these little things as you go.
Well, and I think that's a good comment, actually, because I think, one of the things we try and do around here on the show is try and come up with some like actionable items for people. And I think we're sort of in a society today that's kind of, on the hunt for the quick way to doing everything. And so I think, we ask all these exploratory questions, and I think secretly we're looking for kind of the quick answer. Although for filling podcast time, it's useful if you go long form. but the point is that I think it's useful for people to understand the slog. It wasn't that you started this company knowing how to build robots that, could sign letters. Like, I mean, this was you'd made a decision to form a company doing this, and then you've solved each challenge as they've come or as they've presented themselves. Versus, you walked into something that you've always done your whole life. You always worked for letter writing companies, and it was a natural evolution. Like you're actually problem solving it. And
I'm not tooting my own horn, but somebody said this to me, and it kind of resonated with me. They said, what I'm doing is I'm really an entrepreneur. Somebody else might open up an accounting shop, where they're an accountant and they hang their own hat, and some people call that being an entrepreneur. But this person that said it to me, it really kind of made me feel pretty good, because they said, you're out there solving problems that didn't, that didn't exist, and you're creating your own problems to solve, versus just, and not saying there isn't value in being a realtor or an accountant or whatever else, but it's a different mindset. And I think the mindset of the entrepreneur is like, always looking for these problems to solve.
You're essentially,
unfortunately, I didn't choose problems like Elon Musk or somebody that can really,
right.
some really very valuable problems to solve. But I am trying to help out in my own little way.
Yeah. I mean, you're creating the widget, the product, and then you have to figure out how to do it in the first place. I mean, I would love to see what your initial MVP looked like. What, you said you ordered 4 from this company, and then I'm sure you just sat there manually entering everything in there, and that was your initial MVP. But going from there to making your own robots to do the handwriting for you, that has to be an incredible journey, and props to you on taking it on.
Oh, thanks. It's one that's still in progress, but it's going okay right now. And hopefully people, as kind of getting back to the beginning of where we started on this call, as everything does continue to go more digital, people will see, gee, I miss getting a piece of handwriting in the mail. So, they'll turn to Handwrytten and use us for that. So hopefully.
Yeah, no, I think it's important. Happen. It's funny because you sort of downplay the importance of something like this, but, just to sort of keep with the theme of the importance of sort of this human interaction. I mean, I think that it's almost kind of the future, almost kind of the way, even though that might seem backwards to a lot of people. They're thinking more technology. But I think, there's going to be this reversion back to, taking care of people and doing great things like this. And so even though you're doing it at scale and you're using a technology solution, the end result is to sort of foster better relationships with your end users, if you're not a mattress company. And so,
right.
And so it seems, like you actually are doing maybe bigger work than you realize.
Well, thanks. It's funny when you, Mike, I believe you were talking about that craft beer thing at the beginning. And that's kind of the target market I was going after on the consumer side, was the letterpress, the very tactile, high-end, small shop letterpress card, and then writing on that. And so when we started Handwrytten, the tagline was quality cards, your words, and pen and ink. We're moving away from the quality cards thing just because letterpress cards are outrageously expensive, and you're looking at $6 or $7 a card. But it's the same idea that, people want to have something that's really an art, a piece of art, something micro created, not massively created. And that's where we appeal to the same buyer as that microbrew beer or micro distilled.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because it's just a little bit of a tweak, but this idea of something tactile, even if it's, fake tactile, written by a robot. Right. Like, I mean,
well, that's why it's,
but still getting it in
with
the mail.
A Y. Yes.
So, but getting it in the mail and opening up the envelope and, trying to reuse the postage, all that, is huge, and it's funny that just those little things will, it'll lead to how memorable your company is, and it'll help with referrals. I mean, there's so many things that it can do for you on a business front. I mentioned earlier before we got on the call that I had just had a meeting with a guy, and they are innovating a product right now that is supposed to sort of take the goodwill or the word of mouth that people, are generating, when you buy a product and you're happy and then you go and you tell somebody about it. They're trying to build this kind of referral process for, it's unpaid, but it's just like, here, you get a discount because I spread the word about it, and but the only people spreading that word are the people who trust these companies. Right. And I think things like this, little handwritten notes, add one more layer of trust or one more layer of recognition to a brand. And so I think it could really do a lot. I mean, it's pretty impactful, I think.
Well, that's actually one of our largest customer use cases is review requests. So we have a lot of home painters that are asking their clients for reviews in Yelp. We have a lot of Amazon products that are asking for their reviews in Yelp too, or in Amazon, even though it completely defies the terms of service of Amazon. That's not our problem, but yeah, I mean, we are doing a lot of these requests for referrals, and it's it's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredible.
All right. Well, we're kind of getting there on time. David, before we let you go, is there any parting shots, or where can people find you? And
yeah. So we are handwrytten.com, handwrytten.com. And I will create a $5 sign-up code using eggs, all caps. And if you use that, you'll get $5 off, or actually technically a $5 credit. So use it however you want on handwrytten.com. And you can always find me on Twitter, David B. Wachs, W-A-C-H-S, or LinkedIn too. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, Mike.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, is it low class for me to send you a handwritten note from your service thanking you for appeering? Like, where do we get to?
I should do the same. Don't bother using your $5 credit for that. But,
I just feel like, we're getting into like an Inception moment. We're getting
yeah,
deep.
exactly.
Do you send the handwritten note to the handwritten guy from? Yeah, I don't know. It sounds great to me. So cool. Well, thank you so much for doing that. And, we'll be sure to spread the good word around. And check out handwrytten.com. It's an awesome service. And I have actually already queued up a note to send out. So it's going to be awesome. Looking forward to it. Well, thank you so much, David. Appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who tunes into the show each week. Feel free to reach out. Let us know what you think. And we'll keep going. It's eggscast.com, or you can email the show at info@eggscast.com. So cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much, David. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time.